Hello, my name is Thomas Buell, and today I'm going to be talking about social engineering, its creativity, and how to combat it. To start off, this video is through ICS Class 382, Section 51, and that is Cybersecurity through Metropolitan State University. The professor is Jennifer Grant, Dr. Jennifer Grant. And as a disclaimer, I must mention that this video is solely for educational purposes and that I'm not liable for any damages that may be caused through this video. And then a quick summary of the video. We're going to be talking about social engineering. We'll be defining it. We'll be going through some of the history of social engineering, the types of social engineering and targets of social engineering, and then go through a few testimonials and then ways that we can combat social engineering. So first, to begin, what is social engineering? And it is this basic concept of psychological warfare, using what you know about a person specifically or people in general to take advantage of those people. And the purpose is to gain information from those people or businesses and then gain passwords or financial information so you can access their finances. And then we're going to go through the history of social engineering. And so when that word is thrown around in today's terms, it's usually implied technology, social engineering, but that's not always been the case. If there's a pre-computer age where people would use those same methods of psychological warfare to take advantage of people. And I just came up with a few examples here. The first one is the Catch Me If You Can. It was a movie made in the early 2000s starring Leonardo DiCaprio, and he plays a character, Frank Abagnale Jr., who is a real person in real life. The movie was based off of. And Frank Abagnale Jr. was somebody who he would impersonate other people. So two famous examples was he impersonated pilots and he impersonated attorneys. So he was able to get free stuff just by getting a pilot's uniform, and he was able to call the company Pan Am and convince them that he was an employee. He used a fake employee ID and was able to get free benefits like staying at a hotel. And then the other one was attorney. He made a fake Harvard law degree and was able to get hired on as an attorney after passing a bar exam, which is kind of crazy. And then another one is Ponzi schemes. And those are basically one person pretends to be an investor and convinces a bunch of people to give them money to invest. And then what they'll do is they'll get more and more of these people to invest. And really quickly after the person invests, they'll give them some of the money back and say, look, at your investment has already given you some returns. But really they're just taking the money they had previously from investors and giving it back. And so eventually it runs out because not enough people come back and say, oh, we want our money back. And that's how usually you'll see those schemes will end. And then the third example from the pre-computer age is the Trojan horse, and that's from Homer's Odyssey, where the Greeks pretended to leave the Trojan War, but they left the Trojan horse behind, which was this giant wooden structure. And the Trojan city, they brought the horse into their city, their gated city, and then at night there were Greek soldiers hiding in the horse. They came out, they opened up the gates, and the whole Greek army ransacked the city. So those are those examples. And then from the computer age, there's many examples that I could share, but I'm just going to share three. The first one is Kevin Mitnick, who was probably the most notorious social engineering attacker. He was in the early 90s, was one of the most wanted men in America. And what he would do is he would call up companies and pretend to be an employee of theirs and say, oh, I forgot my employee ID. Can you please give me a new one? Or he would give me a new voicemail. And so then he would set up a voicemail pretending to be this fake employee. So it would legitimize him working there. And then he would call back and ask for information from like the higher ups, and he would usually get information from them. And what's interesting about him, highly interesting figure. I recommend anybody who's interested in this topic to look him up. But what's interesting is he said his goal wasn't even for financial gain. He just wanted to prove that he was the best and that he could trick and manipulate people in this way. And thankfully, nowadays, he's turned a complete 180 and he's now helping cybersecurity. And then the other two examples are from Target and Sony Pictures. And what we'll learn soon enough is both of these attacks were through phishing scams. One, the Target one, they were able to get a bunch of customer credit card information by hacking into Target. And it was a simple phishing scam of clicking on an email or something like that. I don't know if they have the specifics on it, but they knew it was something through phishing. And then Sony Pictures attack was more of a spear phishing where they targeted some top CEOs and they were able to get a bunch of information on finances and future scripts that the Sony Pictures was writing. And then to the right here, we have a bar graph, and it shows the years from 2009 to 2017 of phishing, spoofing, social engineering losses by year. And as you can see, from 2009 to 2012, there was a steady amount of these attacks. And then from 2013 to 2015, it rises highly. But then in 2016, it even escalates even higher. In 2017, they're basically even. But the one thing this is showing is that it's steadily, well, not even steadily, it is rising. And that's just going to continue to happen per the experts. So it's something that we have to be aware of and study. Okay, next we're going to move on to the targets and types of social engineering. So the targets are twofold. They are individuals and businesses. And a lot of time you'll see businesses be attacked, but it will be through an individual. So they're trying to use that individual to gain access to the whole company. And then sometimes it's just individuals where they'll just send out a bunch of random emails to a bunch of individuals, hoping that one of them will click on a link or something of that nature. And the types of social engineering, which there are many, but I'm just going to focus on 4 today, and those are phishing, pretexting, quid pro quo, and baiting. The first that we're going to look at is phishing and spear phishing. So phishing is an attacker that usually sends out through email or text, and they send it out to just a mass amount of people. And it's usually just random who they send it to. But what it will have is it'll have a link with malicious software. So whenever that link is clicked, it will infect the user. And this will allow them to gain personal information from that user, passwords, and even bank information. And usually we see these come through phishing scams or come through emails that are pretending to be charities, a person from another country, a trusted company, or an investor. And we probably all have examples that we've seen of those where someone will send saying, hey, I'm from this company, please wire me X amount of money. And those are those phishing scams. And then spear phishing is when they attack someone specifically. So if you remember, phishing was random attacks to a mass amount of people. Spear phishing is targeted attacks to a smaller group of people. So that was the Sony Pictures. It was a spear phishing attack that they targeted the CEOs. They learned about the CEOs and figured out where they were weak or susceptible to an attack, and then they took advantage of that. And again, those attacks can be through links, and their main goal is to gain sensitive information. The next is pretexting. And pretexting is basically a form of impersonation. So the bad actor pretends to be someone else that the end user may trust. And their goal, again, is to gain sensitive information and trick and manipulate the end user. So these ones are typically phone calls that you'll receive, and they follow just a basic script. And the script is trying to get and the script is well worded, so it's very convincing language that they'll use, trying to get access to your information. The next tool we'll be talking about is baiting and quid pro quo. And quid pro quo is another manipulating attack. And the attackers will contact people or a business, and they're trying to be helpful. They're saying that they're here to help you, but really they're doing the exact opposite. They're trying to steal your information. And so a lot of these attacks will come, they'll receive a call and say, we just got information that your computer has been infected with a virus. Please give us access to your computer so we can help get rid of the virus. And usually through this, they will have done their research and understand where your antivirus software is or what companies you follow. So it will legitimize it. You'll think, oh, this is actually a company that's trying to help me. Sure, I'll give them my password information. But it's always best to verify who they are and maybe even call the company back with the correct number that you find online. And then baiting attacks are trying to take advantage of people's curiosities or desires. And what you'll see in the real world is you'll see somebody maybe leave like a USB out in the open, and this USB will have malicious software on it, and somebody will be curious and put it on their computer. And immediately when they do that, it will infect their computer. But it's not always through the physical form. Sometimes it'll be through a click that's linked on that will offer free product. And this will just play across a curiosity and convincing them to visit the site and visit a site that has a malicious software on it. Next, we'll be talking about some testimonials. So I have 3 examples here, but there's many more that I could share. But this one is funny. I would say through the past year, I probably received 3 or 4 of these voicemails from the same person pretending to be an investigator. And every single time it's worded the exact same way. I almost believe it sounds like a robot. It's worded exactly the same way, and he'll say something, I'm so-and-so, an investigator calling about person X, and that person X always changes. And then it just says, if you know any information about this person, give me a call back. And I'm only guessing, but I think the person wants me to call, and then they're going to ask me to verify my information. And their hope is that I will be intimidated by them as an investigator and that I should respect them and will give them any of the information they ask for. But obviously that's not the best case. You should always verify who the person is. And then this next example is from a friend of the family. It was an elderly person, and they had received a call from somebody saying, oh, is this so-and-so? They knew the person's name. They said, yes, who is this? And the person's response in the other line was, you know who this is. And if you hear them say that, that's usually a bad sign. They're not wanting to give you any information, and they're hoping that you'll provide a name, which unfortunately this person did. They provided them with a name and said, oh, you're my nephew. And they said, of course I am. And then they tried to convince the person to send them money. And thankfully, in the end, it didn't work out that way. But that's what they try to do. They try to trick you, manipulate you, convince you that they are somebody they're not. And then this last example is kind of a funny one. I'm sure many people have seen it, but in comment sections, you'll see online, somebody will post something randomly saying, if you want to make $30,000 a month, click on this link. And obviously, if you click on this link, something bad will happen. Malicious software will be put on your computer. And so it's never good to click on that link. It's always good to do the research first, and we'll go through that next. So preventing social engineering. Do the research, like I had just said. Know what type of companies are out there. Know what you need to look up. What type of social engineering attacks are out there. Do look at videos like this or look up online. How are people trying to take advantage of other people? And there's always new ways, usually the same types of attacks, but they utilize it in different ways. So it's always good to be aware of how attackers are trying to take advantage of the next situation. And then the best thing to do one of the best things to do is think it through and be skeptical. What the attackers are trying to do, they're trying to make you panic, because when people panic, they make quick, rash decisions that aren't always in their best nature, or that are not always best for them. So think it through. Is this really my nephew, or is this really my best friend sending me this email? Be skeptical of these other people. Be skeptical of the companies that are sending you information, and then test it. And so that's kind of our next subject. What we'll be talking about is how we can test for social engineering. And so for this, I'm going to use an example here of an email I received. And this email is from Encore Loan. And if you look, this email, I mean, it doesn't look like a very legitimate email. I guess in some ways it has some click-on buttons and stuff that you can use. But not a lot of information, which is not typical of what you would see from a company sending you something. And then if you see borrow up to $15,000 in a few minutes, apply now. And so they want me to click on this. Now, as you can see, if you look at the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, when I click over the link, a URL will pop up. And that's a good way to check a link. Sometimes they'll say, click on this link to go to our website, and I'll have the website URL. But if you hover over the URL, don't click it on the URL, it will pop up the URL on the bottom left there, and it will be different from the website that is contacting you or reaching out to you. So that's a good way to first verify, is this a legitimate website? Is this a legitimate email that I'm receiving? So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to test this URL, but we're not going to click on it. We're going to right click on it, not left click on it. That'll send you to the website. But if you right click and then you go to copy link, that'll copy it. So now we can paste it. And then, but first what I'll do is I'm actually going to look up Encore Loans on the web. So let's type it in here, Encore Loan. Encore Loan, okay. And the first thing, look, that pops up is a BBB, the Better Business Bureau profile. It says this organization is not BBB accredited. So that's not a good sign right away. That's something I would be very weary of if I saw that. So that's some way you can do it. Just type the company into Google, see if they're a legit company and if they're accredited or not. But then the last step you can do is that link that we had just copied, we can paste it into a URL checker. And I've used Norton LifeLock, as Norton is a popular antivirus software. And what it will do is I'll put this URL in there and it will look up the site and get our rating. So we'll get either an okay, a caution, a warning, or a question mark on it. So let me paste this in there. And then I'm just going to search it. And look at what comes back. First off, we see the caution symbol. We see the website URL. And then it just says website rating is caution, may have small number of threats and annoyances, but are not considered dangerous enough to warrant a red warning. So at least that's good. If I were to click on it, most likely it wouldn't cause a lot of damage, but it potentially could. They're not guaranteeing it. This marks the end of my social engineering video. I hope you found it beneficial. Thank you for listening.